I hear from a lot of young males about their challenges with porn addiction, and they want to know how to get over porn addiction. And the answer there is difficult, but very simple, which is abstinence. It's abstinence. It's taking a period of abstinence from pornography, maybe forever, maybe reducing the amount. This is where it gets very tricky, very subjective, and it's almost impossible to kind of have the discussion without getting into some murky territory.
Yeah.
But it's a real issue. And I know it's a real issue because I hear from thousands over the last few years of the podcast. I've heard from thousands of males that are like, they were addicted to porn.
How do they feel?
It sounds to me as if they feel very dejected. And some of them actually have said they felt very kind of misled, like almost like this natural stimulus for them was dangled in front of them and they just gravitated towards it the same way that any biological organism would gravitate towards something that was triggering its dopamine system. And now they feel depleted and kind of stuck and they don't know what to do. And I don't necessarily think I'm the person to remedy all of this. I certainly am not, but I think there needs to be a conversation, much in the same way that Jonathan Haidt has done an amazing job with Anxious Generation of talking about some of the severe detriments to overuse of social media and social dynamics on social media, in particular in young girls, and how we're now finally realizing that we're in a mental health crisis, at least in part because of some of that, and we need to pay attention to it. I think there needs to be a discussion around pornography and some of the challenges it can potentially present, in particular for young males, which is not to say that girls and women aren't also looking at pornography, because we know they are. The data tell us that. But it does seem to be more of a problem that's being vocalized by young males. And this, of course, dovetails with the whole discussion about dating behavior and how that's changed in dating apps, and, you know, how the ready availability of kind of the possibility or anticipation of a partner is there, but actual dating behavior and real world sexual behavior is reduced. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be discussed. And, you know, ideally we would have a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a kind of panel of experts to talk about this. And maybe we do this together, you know, as a service to the world, because I hear about this a lot. You know, for instance, just by way of contrast, I'm not getting a ton of YouTube comments and emails from people saying, hey, you know, I really struggle with, with ribeye steak addiction or with coffee addiction or energy drink addiction, maybe a little bit with energy drinks, but it's not crashing lives. It's not causing people to feel depressed, miserable about themselves. It's not causing people to have sexual dysfunction issues in real world interactions. I mean, this is also the concern, right? That young people are getting so attuned to certain dopamine dynamics related to pornography that they don't either get aroused or know how to handle real world intimate interactions.
Erectile dysfunction, all those kinds of things.
For instance.
I have to be honest, and I just have to be honest because nothing else is useful, but I remember the first time I saw a pornographic image when I was young, and it was just a picture of like someone with like a nipple out. And it was the most arousing thing in the world. And obviously as I've aged, I'm now 31, it would take a lot for me to feel aroused. I certainly wouldn't get aroused at seeing like the thing that aroused me when I was 16 or whatever that I found, for example, in it. And that, as you were saying, I was thinking, gosh, even my arousal cycle as I've gotten, over the last 10 years has changed because of the availability of pornography, but also just sex in real life has become more extreme as it tries to keep up with the expectations that pornography sets. And then I thought about a lot what you said about people messaging you, thousands of them, about pornography. And the unfortunate thing about the abstinence advice is it leaves many of them with what alternative?
I mean, one would hope, depending on, the circumstances, that they would seek out healthy relationships.
If you're struggling with nofap, you're not alone. Hundreds of men have picked up our nofap guide. Inside, we cover proven techniques to help you curb your addiction so you can be PMO-free. One of the most useful things that I learned was changing your environment in order to create different pathways in your brain and stop the negative relapse loop. I cover it all and so much more in the guide. Check it out today. Links are in the description. Now back to the video.
And then this goes to the social elements you described, which is it's really difficult. And I've had multiple people sit here saying to me that it's really the top 10% of men that are having most of the sex. And this bottom 50% of men haven't had sex for a year. I go, so we got to tell a 19-year-old horny young man that he's got to abstain from masturbation and pornography. And we might not be able to offer him an alternative for a year.
Well, I'm not telling anyone what to do.
I know, it's not you, but I'm...
Right, or maybe
but
throttle back his behavior, or think about ways in which things he could do could lead to healthy romantic and sexual interactions, assuming that, he's of an age and, the circumstances are for that. I think that it's, as you can tell, as I'm kind of stumbling here, I'm not trying to be careful. I'm trying to be as accurate as possible while also not stating things that I don't believe are true. Like, can pornography be consumed by certain people in a healthy way? Well, probably yes. Do a lot of people get carried away with it and it starts to become a detriment in their lives? Maybe even an addiction, maybe even impede other aspects of romantic and workplace behavior. Yes, we hear this all the time.
Do you know where I am now? I'm arriving at the position that I think pornography is bad because, again, I get lots of DMs and messages, and the more I've understood about the brain and the body and dopamine, etc., I just can't find a net positive of pornography. Yeah. I can't find one, especially as it relates to my relationship with my partner. I've been with her for 5 years now. And I think that me watching pornography, especially if I'm watching it frequently, is going to help my performance in the bedroom? Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's sort of, what's that old saying? You want to get good at push-ups, do push-ups.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably the best place to get good at intimate conversation and behavior is in the context of, like you said, like a great relationship with great communication, that sort of thing. I do hear about this concern from people a lot. I think that it's hard to imagine more benefits than kind of concerns or risks when it comes to pornography, especially for young males. I too grew up in an era where someone would have knowledge of like a Playboy magazine or something. Typically it was stashed someplace in town and then people would go visit it, It was like a library or something. It was sort of like an urban library type environment where, people would know, oh yeah, it was always like a dumpster or something terrible. It would be like behind the dumpster, behind this building, like there's a stack of Playboys, and like then people would go there, right? But it wasn't a big part of my childhood. It wasn't a big part of my life. I never found any pornography in my home. Like, some kids will stumble across their dad's magazines. I never had that experience. I think that a lot can be said about the requirements and importance of creating healthy dating behavior. And that's a real world experience kind of thing. And, this is a bigger discussion that deserves a lot of time. Growing up in a world where so much of the input arrives through the internet, again, a low effort threshold, high dopamine scenario. Somebody wants to find something on the internet, they just Google for it and they can find it. This is not potentially problematic. This is problematic. What it requires ultimately, however, I believe, is self-regulatory mechanisms. There is no way that legislature is going to prevent us from having access to things. It's just not, because people have always found a way. You think about prescription drugs that deliver dopamine without much effort. Even if people don't have a prescription, I think the data are something like 80% of college students have taken prescription stimulants without a prescription. When I went to college, nobody did that. Nobody. We drank coffee. Occasionally someone would take a no-dose, like a caffeine pill or something, and that was considered extreme, and I still don't recommend it. Now, there's all this consumption of pharmacology, there's consumption of porn, and I think that successful individuals will learn and understand this relationship about dopamine, especially their own, and they will learn to regulate, and they will be very careful about anything that spikes dopamine really high without much preceding effort and that has the capacity for addiction. So I worry far less about the energy drink, the loud music, and the workout, far, far less, maybe not at all, than I do high intensity pornography consumed on a regular basis, people taking prescription stimulants who don't need them. That's a recipe for burnout, depression, or worse.
Ready to conquer nofap? Grab our digital nofap guide now. End your porn addiction. Skyrocket your self-esteem and achieve your goals. Packed with proven techniques, expert advice, and relapse prevention tricks. Click the link below and break free today.